This is CBC Vancouver News.
Extremely courageous, brave, selfless acts by these bystanders, these Good Samaritans.
Vancouver police credit 3 people for jumping to help during a violent robbery and share advice about buying and selling things online. Plus,
very devastating moment for the families.
a sad end in the search for a BC trucker last seen in Manitoba. Also,
it's some simple steps you can take and it will save a life.
trying to save more black bears. One group in the Kootenay says it's working. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Vancouver police are praising a group of Good Samaritans they say helped stop a robbery yesterday. It happened during a Facebook market exchange in Olympic Village. As John Hernandez shows us, the meeting between buyer and seller quickly turned violent.
You could call it a holiday helping hand during a desperate time of need. The attempted robbery happened in Vancouver's Olympic Village on Tuesday night. 2 people agreed to meet up for a Facebook marketplace exchange. One of them was selling a computer graphics card. Now those can cost upwards of $1,000. During the exchange, the buyer tried to flee without paying, running down this street. When he was confronted by the seller was allegedly pepper sprayed. That's when 2 Good Samaritans jumped in.
There were 2 witnesses. They were food delivery workers who were nearby, who heard calls for help, saw the aftermath of the robbery, and rushed to intervene. They were joined by a 3rd person who just happened to be in the Olympic Village, who was running errands. And working together, the 3 of them were able to stop the suspect from fleeing.
During the scuffle, one of the food delivery drivers was stabbed in the hand, the other was stabbed in the shoulder, but they were able to hold the suspect down until police arrived. Now, police say they arrested a 21-year-old man who is known to them, and the VPD says while it never encourages people to put themselves in harm's way, they do acknowledge that the Good Samaritans actually helped an arrest get made in this case. Sergeant Steve Addison says the incident also highlights the inherent risks with selling valuable items online.
We encourage people, if they're going to make those transactions, to take extreme precautions. While you're never going to eliminate the risk, you're never going to completely eliminate the risk involved. One of the things that we encourage people to do, and I know that other police agencies are doing the same thing, come do it in front of the police station. Police
say the suspect is still in custody, but no charges have been laid. As for the Good Samaritans, they're both okay and could be honored in the near future. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
A silent vigil was held in Vancouver today to honor victims of femicide in BC. Advocates held placards with the names and ages of BC women who were killed by men this year. Through police reports and media, Vancouver Rape Relief and Women's Shelter counted 14 victims in 2023. It says it's not an official number, though, and it's unclear how many women were actually killed by men.
It's very hard to actually get an accurate count. We monitor media, we monitor police statement, but we know we don't have the full list. So definitely one of our demands is that either the police or the BC coroner publishes the full name, the full list of women, so we know who they were, so we can mourn her.
Advocates are calling for more information about the cases, along with affordable housing for female victims of violence. There is more speculation about the investigation into the killing of Surrey Sikh temple leader Hardip Singh Nijjar. He was gunned down on temple grounds in June. The Globe and Mail is now reporting that police are expected to make arrests in his murder soon. Armira Baines tells us what we know.
Giant posters with Hardip Singh Nijjar's image are visible at the Guru Nanak Sikh Gurdwara in Surrey. He was the temple's president and supported the creation of Khalistan, an independent state to be carved out of India.
It's very bad. People are frustrated about this.
Community members have mixed reactions about a Globe and Mail report that says arrests in the temple leader's killing could happen soon.
I'm not sure about the arrests that are coming, but I'm sure that kind of evidence.
The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team issued a statement in light of the recent newspaper report. IHIT spokesperson Sergeant Timothy Pirati said, "This remains an active investigation, and as such, IHIT cannot comment on any investigational steps being taken or any evidence that has been collected." The federal government has faced criticism for not taking more action against foreign interference. This comes even after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said there were credible allegations the Indian government may have been involved in Nijjar's murder.
It's possible that this leak of information might have been done purposely. Since basically fall 2022, we've seen the Globe and Mail coming out constantly, and other media, including CBC, coming out with information, privileged information, to force the hand of the Kenyan government.
With no official word about any arrests, suggestions that they may be coming are cold comfort to the congregation here. Mira Baines, CBC News, Surrey.
The search for a BC truck driver last seen in Winnipeg has ended sadly. Police discovered his body last night. As Zubina Ahmed reports, officers have not yet shared any information about how he died.
This is the parking lot in Furby Street, where Farah Mohammed's semi-truck was last seen. The 34-year-old truck driver drove from Vancouver to Winnipeg. He delivered his shipment last Friday on December 22nd, and that was the last time his family heard from him. Family friend Saeed Ahmed says Mohammed was found dead. Ahmed says he learned about the death from the father late last night.
Police informed them that they discovered his body not far away from where you did the interview with them. It was a very devastating moment for the family. So they're hoping to receive more answers today.
Ali Mohammed traveled from Edmonton to look for his missing son. He told CBC on Tuesday they last heard from him on December 22nd around dinner time.
He spoke to his wife and he asked her if the kids came from the school and came home safely. Since then, there's no communication.
Mohammed moved to Canada from Somalia in 2011. The father of three lived in Delta, BC with his wife.
He was really hard worker, a family man, and very really cool guy, usual nice guy, family man, loves what he was doing.
Mohammed's employer, Reef Trucking Enterprises, say they believe he pulled into the parking lot to sleep after completing his delivery. They say that he had another shipment to load the next morning. They refuse to comment further because his death is still under investigation. The Winnipeg police is not divulging any more information further. Zubina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Less than a month after he was appointed, the BC government has now removed a municipal advisor for Kamloops, and it's not clear why.
The ministry representatives that called me simply said that the government had decided to take a different direction, and that's the only explanation that I received.
Former Liberal Cabinet Minister Peter Fassbender was given the job after Kamloops Council voted unanimously in October to ask for provincial help amid lawsuits, investigations, and concerns around the first-time mayor's conduct. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs says it's working quickly to find someone else to fill the job. Things are looking a little bit better for black bears in Nelson. Last year, the West Kootenay City was listed as one of the deadliest communities in BC for the creatures. But as Corey Bullock reports, one group is trying to change that.
Last year, 21 bears were reportedly killed in Nelson, 17 of which were in city limits. Many of them were addicted to garbage. Now the URSA project is working to fix that. The group is working to educate the public about things like garbage and fruit trees, which are some of the #1 attractants for bears.
We go door to door and talk to people about what are your challenges? Do you need help trying to figure out where you can put your garbage or how to manage your compost? And so we just talk about with every resident that we reach, and we do farmers markets and reach out that way as well, but just try to get people to understand that it's some simple steps you can take and it will save a life.
So far, she says, it's working.
You know, last year they killed 17 bears in town, and we are so delighted to say that not one single bear has been killed in our city limits this year.
CBC News reached out to the BC Conservation Officer Service, which could not confirm these numbers for Nelson, but it did applaud people like Graves for their work in bear smart practices. According to provincial predator data, more than 660 bears were killed by November of this year in BC, and that's why Graves is doing what she does.
And I just want to give people, a glimmer of hope and let people know that your actions mean something and it could save lives.
The group hopes to continue saving lives and make sure bears in BC remain wild. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Cranbrook.
You've probably felt it across the country. Canadians are experiencing an unseasonably warm winter. And as Yvette Bren shows us, that's frustrating for those who love snow sports and rely on them for business.
The holiday break is usually a great time to hit the slopes, but not enough snow to bother for these skiers.
It used to be all beautiful with the snows and everything. Right now, no, it's just gravel. So we just decided not to.
Snowboard sales here are slow despite discounts.
I think right now there's just a lot of disappointment. We were a little impatient, and now it's time, and we don't really get to get out there, so it's a bummer.
The El Nino weather pattern has warmed the west coast.
We expected a lot more snow. We expected that to be frozen over to get the skates out, but it's still beautiful.
But other parts of Canada are also unseasonably warm, making it difficult for businesses banking on winter weather.
December is always a challenge with Mother Nature for us, but it seems to be getting harder and harder, and this year especially has been difficult.
In Alberta last Friday, 10 temperature records were broken. At least 2 were 50 years old, according to Environment and Climate Change Canada. Some parts got close to 15 degrees Celsius.
Well, absolutely. It's very unlike this time of the year when in Canada. I mean, we are the snowiest country in the world. We're the second coldest, and this is more like a Vancouver Christmas from coast to coast. It is absolutely, in many ways, shocking because it is national.
So with slopes like this, a lot of people are checking the weather daily for any sign of new snow.
I bought a 5-day pass to Whistler, and I haven't used it yet, so, and a lot of people have done that, so I feel sorry for them, I really do. And I feel sorry for all the resorts and everything because, they're trying to make some money, right? And it's hard to make money when you don't have any snow.
For now, all skiers can do is hope. Yvette Bren, CBC News, Vancouver.
Cheese shops in BC are bracing for the fallout of a trade deadlock between Canada and the UK. After Brexit, an interim deal allowed Canada to import British cheese tariff-free. But that deal is dead by the end of this year. As Ali Patarga shows us, some sellers are worried about meeting demand.
Well, if you enjoy a good slice of Stilton this holiday season, this could be the last year where you could get some at a reasonable price. Stiltons, along with Wensleydales and British Cheddars, are some of the most popular items offered at the Cheeseman in North Vancouver. Owner Doug Martin says British cheeses make up roughly 20% of his sales.
Christmas time it probably goes up because a lot of cheeses like Stilton are very Christmassy cheeses. And there's a lot of expats on the North Shore, and so we see a lot of British cheeses being sold through here.
But next year, lovers of British cheese may have to make do with French, Swiss, Italian, or Canadian, because an interim cheese trade agreement between Canada and the UK, called the Cheese Letters, is set to expire at the end of the year. After Brexit, the UK also had to exit its trade agreement with Canada. But for 3 years, the Cheese Letters allowed Canada to import British cheeses without tariff, as both parties worked to negotiate a long-term deal.
Well, that permanent agreement has not happened. So we're sitting here saying, well, the premise should still stand. The Global Affairs Canada should extend the Cheese Letters so that our business is not disrupted.
This could cause a major slowdown in imports, and shortages could mean price increases. For Martin, he says keeping British cheeses in stock will be more difficult.
If the prices have gone up, obviously we have to pass that price on.
He says it's not just the price at stake, but also missing out on unique UK products.
So that's a white Stilton with mango and ginger. So how do you find a replacement for that elsewhere?
Exporters on the other side of the Atlantic are also feeling the pressure.
it wouldn't take an awful long time to actually to decimate it, to be honest, and that's worrying. And it would affect us on this side of the water in terms of the amount we're buying from cheesemakers, but it also will affect jobs in Canada as well.
Martin says he thinks those in the cheese business are caught in the middle.
Well, there's a lot of moving parts in the background that you or I probably aren't aware of, and those are the things that are on the negotiating table.
In the meantime, if customers end up making a switch to different products, Martin says other cheesemakers, including those in Canada, could benefit from the shortage. Ali Patarga, CBC News, North Vancouver.
First time a Canadian's gone to the moon, and the first time since 1972 that anyone's gone to the moon.
The world of science saw highs and lows in 2023. Up next, Bob McDonald tells us more about his top science stories of the year. Stick around. And thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. A group of BC researchers is working on a potentially game-changing way to store emissions. Julia Wong shows us their plan to sequester carbon dioxide deep below the seafloor.
The climate impacts have to be addressed.
For Kate Moran, the fight to bring down emissions means conquering a new frontier, the ocean.
The ocean has the biggest capacity, including the ocean basalt, to actually help us with removing CO2 from the atmosphere.
The Solid Carbon Project is the first of its kind in Canada, years in the making. Wind turbines will power direct air capture technology, aiming to suck CO2 from the air, then pump it below the ocean floor, where the CO2 would react with basalt, eventually turning into rock. Carbon sequestration is already happening on land, but Moran says this is different.
This technology is the ultimate in terms of durability because it will react with the basalt, form rock, and never go back into the atmosphere.
This past summer, the team went on an expedition to survey the ocean floor and to test camera equipment and CO2 monitoring devices.
Then we're looking at this Cascadia region.
Its focus is on the Cascadia Basin, 300 kilometers off Vancouver Island. The team says basalt there has the potential to store 750 gigatons of CO2, or up to 20 years of global emissions. These red clusters show how much basalt there is on Earth. The big question is whether all this can be done.
It's not going to capsize or something like that. So it does look like a feasible way to do it.
I think for some people that concept might just be a little mind-blowing.
Yes, and it is. I mean, it is. Anytime you go offshore, it's a more extreme environment.
Moran sees this project as necessary to help save the planet.
My view is that innovation doesn't happen without perseverance.
The team still needs to demonstrate that this can work, and they need $60 million in funding to get there. If successful, this Made in Canada solution could be used around the world in the fight to lower emissions. Julia Wong, CBC News, North Saanich, British Columbia.
This year has been a dynamic one, to say the least, for science research, climate events, and space exploration. CBC Radio's Bob McDonnell is the host of Quirks and Quarks. He's been keeping a running tab of the standouts, and he joins us now to tell us about 4 of his top science stories of 2023. Bob, a lot to choose from this year. What piqued your interest in the world of science in 2023?
Well, Dan, one of the first stories is about space, and it's a Canadian story. Our Canadian astronaut, Jeremy Hansen, is going to fly to the moon. And it's the first time a Canadian's gone to the moon, and the first time since 1972 that anyone's gone to the moon. He's not going to land. He's going to go there on a 10-day mission as part of the Artemis II mission with 3 other astronauts. They're going to circle the moon and come back. But what's different about this one is that they're going to go beyond the moon. They're going to go farther into space than anyone's ever gone. And there's actually going to come a point where they'll be able to look back and see both the moon, the full moon, and the Earth in the same shot out the window. That's going to be amazing. No humans ever saw that. So it's going to be quite a flight. Hopefully get off next year.
Amazing. And another one to do with the space as well, right? A big telescope.
The James Webb Space Telescope, the most powerful one we've ever put into space, continues to rewrite the astronomy textbooks. It looks back farther in time than any telescope has ever done before, and it's seen galaxies that are less than 1 billion years old. That's really, really young. And what they're finding is that these galaxies are much more mature than they thought before. They thought that galaxies started out kind of rough and then turned into beautiful spirals like ours, but they're finding way back there, they're much more developed. So it's rethinking how galaxies come together and how stars started, looking at our own origins is kind of exciting.
And the images that it is bringing back are stunning. Oh, yeah. So space research, obviously a highlight this year. What else caught your eye?
Well, one of the other things is the wildfire season that we had this year. Not just in BC, but right across Canada. There were more fires than ever on record. 2023 was the hottest year on record. And to me, it just says that climate change is no longer a thing of the future. It's here. It's now. It's in our face. And I'm just hoping that this is a wake-up call to move on to clean energy, and just get on with it, because it's not going to get any better.
And to round out, we've got AI and ChatGPT, lots of things going on with that. What piqued your interest there?
Well, I've been doing some surveys, and I found that a lot of people in the public are afraid of artificial intelligence. It's going to turn into Terminator and take over the world. I don't think that's going to happen. But ChatGPT and artificial intelligence are proving to be very, very powerful tools. And in fact, Canada's top prize, the Hertzberg Gold Medal, was given to Joshua Bengio, who was one of the founders of artificial intelligence. And he said, it's a great tool. It's going to do wonders for science, but we have to be careful how it's used and that it's not misused. So like any powerful tool that's come along in the past, we have to be careful about how it's used. But it's an exciting new time in computer intelligence.
Let's just hope we avoid Skynet. Bob McDonnell, CBC Radio's host of Quirks and Quarks. Thanks so much, Bob. Here's a live shot of Science World. Russ Lacate will paint us a BC-wide weather picture right after this.
Mikey Ham created a 90s world of skateboarding teen adventurers during the pandemic. But what started as a couple of short stories, he realized was better suited as a role-playing board game.
I'm inspired by a lot of Saturday morning cartoons and stuff I grew up with, but also really just inspired by the idea of exploring teenagehood, both like my own and just the teenagers in general and the whole idea. And I have kids that are hurtling towards that age faster than it seems possible.
It won Role-Playing Game of the Year from the Indie Groundbreaker Awards. David Plamondon is the owner of Pometoway Games. He says that while their store carries a lot of locally made games, Slug Blaster has something special.
But I do think Slug Blaster really kind of stands above them in terms of the design, the charm, the passion behind it, and really the care that Mikey put into developing the game and wanting to make sure that it's representative of not just his lived experience, but other people's lived experiences, being able to tell their stories in that setting.
The Dungeons & Dragons style game takes place in the fictional Hillview, based on Three Hills, Alberta. According to the game manual, Hillview has a gas station, a curling rink, 14 churches, and some of the thinnest space-time fabric on the planet.
In some ways, this is almost a memoir because I put a lot of stuff about my own teenagehood in there and the small town it takes place in, as your like starting base is almost a one-to-one replica of my small town that I grew up in.
The manual's illustrators include local artists, and the first couple copies were also printed in Alberta. Ham is creating a second edition of the game sold in a pizza-style box. It's expected to hit the shelves this spring. Emily Williams, CBC News, Edmonton.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Enjoy groundbreaking contemporary works of theatre, dance, music, and multimedia at the annual Push International Performing Arts Festival, January 19th to February 4th. For the festival program and tickets, visit pushfestival.ca. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver Inbox and keep connected with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Time for our BC-wide weather forecast with meteorologist Russ Lacate as we deal with a really warm stretch, Russ.
Really mild. I mean, we've seen these temperatures up near record values the last couple of days, and I'm not saying it's backed by popular demand, but it is the same weather for the rest of 2023 as we see another storm in this continuing cycle diving far to the south into the base of this huge trough of low pressure, which parallels the North American coastline. And this one will dive down to coastal California and leave us with that same southerly jet stream pushing mild air across BC and largely keeping all of the active weather associated with each one of these systems to the coastal regions. Vancouver Island, exposed sections of the central and north coast, Haida Gwaii, and some sections of the Coast Range Mountains as well. While this semi-permanent high setting up in the prairie provinces here really pushes aside all of that inclement weather. The leftover little bits of mixed rain and snow in parts of the interior gone by tomorrow morning as we trend back towards drier conditions again. So a lot of active weather on the outer coast, a wet, windy 8 degrees in Prince Rupert tomorrow, up to 11 in Tofino, maybe a dozen degrees in Victoria. Admittedly, that is light intermittent rain. And some of the areas a little farther inland still dealing with that sort of mixed rain and snow. And I don't think it's going to be snowing into the village in Whistler tomorrow. Probably a little bit soupy with some cold rain, snow above mid-mountain. All areas east of the Coast Range enjoying drier conditions, unseasonably mild, 4 above in Kamloops, 6 above for Williams Lake, trending a little colder through the Peace District and towards Fort Nelson. Might be about -9 in the sun in Fort Nelson tomorrow. Now, it was mild around here, and how mild? Pretty close to record values again. Look at some of these numbers from Metro Vancouver earlier today. We saw a dozen degrees in Abbotsford, 10 in Pitt Meadows, and leading the charge, 14 on the North Shore in West Vancouver. It really is mild for the rest of this year. Your forecast highs for the next few in a row, still above 10 degrees or pretty close to it. It's dry on Friday, trending wet again Saturday into Sunday. Maybe not for the evening hours on New Year's Eve. We have a nice cooler and drier trend shaping up for the start of 2024.
All right, Russ, thanks very much.
You bet.
And that is your late news for Wednesday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news at any time, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1 that begins tomorrow morning at 5:30. Good night.